I'm hoping this will work. Hi everyone, this is Claire Dubois here. I'm in Stroud with one of my all-time heroines, and a heroine I'm sure of a lot of you actually. I'm here with Polly Higgins, who has started the Eradicating Ecocide movement. She also started Trees Have Rights Too way back when, which hopefully she'll speak to us shortly about. I'm with Polly because she is probably one of the bravest and most articulate women I know. In terms of feminine leadership, she is out there working on the front lines up against systems which frankly scare the crap out of me. And she's brave enough, and she's strong enough, and she has enough of the guts and the knowledge and the experience to do what for so many of us is completely unthinkable. So she's carving a path. She's carving a path in human consciousness. She's carving a path in law. She's carving a path in systems that are outright destructive and wanting to stay unconscious. And she is refusing to be complicit to that unconsciousness. And for that, I am just astonished and astounded and deeply privileged to be with her. So I'm wielding Facebook Live here like I know what I'm doing. I'm praying to God I can turn this around now and see if I can. Yes, I can. So I'm going to just say hello to you. Here's Polly! Yay! It works. Polly, I would love it if you could, well, just introduce yourself and let the TreeSisters Network know where this started for you and where you're going right now.
Well, Claire, thank you very much. That was a very humbling introduction. I am an earth lawyer. I'm advocating for an international crime of ecocide to criminalize ecosystem destruction. It's more than that. In a way, what we're doing is realigning law at the very top end, and bringing in justice to protect not just humanity but the earth as a whole. And that, in a way, is a kind of realignment of law, of human law with higher law, based on a principle of first do no harm. So by criminalising ecocide to stand alongside genocide as an international crime, what it does mean is that our starting point when we're looking at state-sanctioned industrial immunity today, the first and overriding question will always be, is what we are doing here, are our corporate operations or our state operations, are they going to cause serious harm? And if so, we can't go there. So it's a preemptive law, if you like, and that's very important because international crime does that. It preempts and ensures that decision-making comes from the best place. International criminal law, as with all criminal law, is about justice. So the starting point always is this going to cause serious harm? If so, we can't go there. And if you like, ecocide is missing justice, it's missing law. We have genocide, we have war crimes, we have crimes against humanity, we even have crimes of aggression, the run-up to war that was signed off in the United Nations back in December. And now we're looking at adding to that a missing fifth international crime against peace, and that is ecocide.
Which has almost happened twice, I believe.
That's right. That's right. When I first proposed ecocide to become an international crime into the United Nations Law Commission back in 2010, I didn't actually know it had a history. That was discovered a few years later when a journalist came forward. He'd found just one document that referred to ecocide and the fact that 50 countries already supported it, dating back into the mid-1990s. And with that one UN document, we managed to unearth a huge paper trail of documents that took it all the way back to 1972 and the Stockholm Conference, where Olof Palme, the then Prime Minister of Sweden, actually berated the United Nations for dragging their heels from failing to put in place ecocide as an international crime. And we now know that it went back even further. Raphael Lemkin, who was the lawyer who advocated for genocide, he even proposed ecocide to become an international crime, and that was back in the 1940s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 1948. So that has a history. And of course, that greatly helped me to discover this. It just goes to show you can't keep a good idea down. It will pop up again and again. And that in truth, if any lawyer had put their mind to this, they would have started to recognise that there was missing crime here. Can you imagine what this would look like if it had already been put in place? How that would have fundamentally shifted how we operate politically, how we operate economically, how we operate within business, to operate from a first do no harm principle to the earth. Could you imagine what this world would look like? How accelerated we would have been in terms of taking forward renewable energy, even free energy we now talk about. How we would be operating from a system of deep care on every decision-making process. It would be really quite remarkable.
I just want it. Like, I want it yesterday. Like, I want it 40 years ago. You know, and as the New York Times comes out with their big article at the moment, which is, you know, suddenly everybody's understanding how close we got to actually addressing climate change in the 70s. And the fact that, you know, there has been a consciousness. I mean, of course there's a consciousness on this planet. It sits there with every indigenous culture that we have. But there's been this consciousness of understanding sacred reciprocity.
Yeah.
And of understanding, of course, do no harm, because when you do harm to the planet, you're doing harm to yourself.
Exactly.
But there's been this counter consciousness or unconsciousness on the planet, which is just wantonly destructive. And the fact that you're having to fight for principles and values that say, please can we stop destroying our future? And there is radical opposition to that, still kind of blows my mind. And that is the state of play. The state of play is that we're sitting there having to fight for no fracking, we're having to fight for clean water, we're having to fight for the lungs of the planet, for the rainforests not to be... How do you stay sane with it, Polly? I
had to give up fighting.
Oh God. Tell me how you do that.
Well, although that's not to say that I manage that every day. I got to a point where I recognise that it's not a fight for me, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to engage with a different way of operating. I'm providing a legal pathway forward that takes us to a better place. I'm not saying it's the only pathway, but what I am doing is providing a fast track as to how we can actually take law to a better place, which in turn informs how we operate within society today. And by offering that as a choice, even by having the conversation, if you've never heard of this before, it's expanding your awareness of what's possible. And I'm expanding your vision of what's possible. It's a choice then whether or not you help take that forward or whether or not you step away and actually remain complicit within the harm. So as more and more people engage with this narrative, it's kind of, you know, the conversation for a better world, if you like. It's a form of actually seeding something that takes root and takes root within us. Now, that sounds quite esoteric, really, but in truth, it's quite pragmatic, it's quite practical, because in essence what we're doing is we're putting forward a legal pathway that is life-affirming. This is something that will ensure that we flourish, that the earth flourishes, that future generations flourish upon this earth. So it's a very practical application to it.
And it's rather hard to argue against.
Yes.
In reality, there's only going to be so much arguing against it you can do before you sound like a raving lunatic.
Precisely. And the reality is that it's common sense. You know, if we are to survive, and not just survive, but also thrive on this earth, then we have a collective duty of care to protect. So this is about imposing at the highest level within the justice system a code of governance, if you will, to ensure that we uphold our collective duty to protect our earth. And that is something that actually many people are in alignment with and have been and will continue to be so. This is a law that's really to help govern those who continue to destroy, cause serious harm. It's about accountability at the very top end. It's about corporate accountability, and it's about state accountability as well. So this is really based on the premise that we all count, hence accountability. We all matter in all of this. And it's about applying a form of governance to very few individuals in the world who know that what they're doing is causing harm, but continue regardless.
Because, I mean, how I see it is you're actually changing the shape of our consciousness. It's like you're creating a new structure, which is a new way of thinking, which is essentially values-based and life-based, which
Precisely.
is closer to the truth of who we are, therefore is, you can't fight against it. I mean, people are fighting against it, I think more because of the momentum of the old and the current systems that we have considered to be right for so long have normalized a state of radical dominance over life, and therefore it's okay to take. But I can feel it so strongly that it's changing. We're no longer quite so able to take for granted systems that are wantonly destructive, and collectively people are starting to move away from that. And so it's like you're a tuning fork for a different vibration. And as you ring that tuning fork for something, as you say, you're not fighting anymore, it's like this quiet truth in a way that you cannot say isn't true, because try telling me that human life in the future doesn't matter, try telling me that having a living ecosystem that can support us doesn't matter. As you stand there as a voice of sanity amidst the insanity, you create your own sort of magnetic center. And more people start resonating because it's a truth, it's closer to who we are. And so, you're standing there, and that's not an easy place to stand. It's not an easy place to stand.
Sometimes not. But Claire, you know this as well.
I know.
I know this from TreeSisters. It can be really challenging to stand in your own truth, and to let go of the desire to have people agree with me, and to know that that's fine. People will come to this when they're ready, some people sooner than others, and the invitation to come on board, and it is an invitation and a choice, and to recognize that people can choose a different way. It's their way, that's fine too. I mean, this is always a challenge when you're holding something very big, that I very much wanted lots and lots of people to come on board very, very fast with this, but recognizing that actually the universe has its own cycle with this, its own iteration. It's non-linear. It comes in different shapes and forms, in different ways, and in a way it's also letting go of the outcome, standing strong in the truth of this, allowing it to resonate, and it will grow stronger and stronger, and take root where it's required to take root. We all often talk about, in my team, about how we're creating the enabling conditions for this to really flourish, how we're creating the enabling conditions for small island developing states to really take this law forward. They're the ones that most require it. They have climate ecocide, rising sea levels, tsunamis, floods. They're at the front line of the extremities of what's happening. They're suffering the most. And ironically, they're the kind of the swing nation states, if you like. They're the ones that actually hold the power in their hands to take this forward into the International Criminal Court. And a few years back, we recognised that the missing link, if you will, is the helping to finance them to do that, for them to attend the annual assembly of the International Criminal Court to actually propose an amendment costs money. And it costs funds to bring delegates, to bring lawyers, to bring experts, to actually have that dialogue and then make that presentation, which is why we've set up Mission Life Force, our campaign, to take this forward. And again, this is also about inviting civil society to actually help fund. It's a crowd fund that's pegged to a legal system, to a legal fund. It's a trust fund, so that this can have roots in its own right and can't be knocked over. So it's the Earth Protectors Trust Fund is what you give money into, and you become legally an Earth Protector in law by signing that document, and that has its own assistance.
Let us know how we can do that, because this is one of those
Yeah.
places that it's where the pedal hits the metal. It's like it's a practical action that we can all
Yeah.
take.
Well, very much.
But rather than sitting, I mean, we're doing it inside of TreeSisters with the trees, but it's
Yeah.
like we all need to find multiple different ways of feeling as if we're making a difference, like genuinely making a difference. And what I'm hearing is, here is a way that we could actually be helping those island nations that are struggling deeply. We could actually be contributing to help them get a foot in the door, the foot in the door that they most need. So tell us how we do that.
So go to missionlifeforce.org, and there you can sign up to be an Earth Protector in law. It's a trust fund document, so we're inviting you to put money into the pot. That money is ring fenced. It's being used specifically to assist and pay for delegates from the small island developing states and their lawyers and their teams to come over to The Hague and to New York to become participants in the international criminal court system, so that they can then present the law of ecocide to become an international crime. And your funds are being used for that. They're not being used to pay for me or my team. Our back-end work that we do, it's purely, every single penny is being used to help facilitate those countries, those small island developing states that most require this law for climate purposes to be taken forward. And what we'll do is, you're then part of the team, we'll take you on the journey. And we ask you to help us take this journey forward to others as well, because the strength is in those who sign up. The more of us that sign up to this, the greater the safe space we create for those small islands to take this forward. There will be pushback by major states who don't want this law in place. So the more of us that make it public and keep it in the public domain, as those tiny guys take it forward, it really is the epic David and Goliath story, then the stronger they can stand by having civil society who care standing alongside them.
It so matters. It so matters that we stand around them. It so matters that we don't just stand and watch this happening. It's
Precisely.
like it's a place that we can all really make a difference. When I think about the possibility of a law that finally makes it illegal to wantonly destroy, I imagine, and you must have had conversations like this, so I'm curious, I imagine it would actually be a huge relief to many CEOs and COOs around the world who, and you know, Joe Blogg's workers and all of these organizations who are desperately trying to make ends meet, working for organizations that are making a killing. And the majority of our organizations are making a killing because everything is based on stripping our ecology. And then suddenly, if legally it is against the law, or the law actually is we have to do right, don't you think it would be one of the most enormous reliefs that we've ever had, once we've gone through the dissonance of, oh my God, now what? Actually, this is saying, please, actually, can we come back to who and what we really are as protectors of this world?
Completely. And this is often misunderstood. It's seen as creating some form of punishment tool. If in fact it's not, it's providing assistance. Many individuals within companies who are causing serious harm today don't actually want to be doing that. However, there is no law that creates a level playing field for them to do otherwise. If you like, it's a system that's become trapped within itself. It's a hermetically sealed cycle of harm. And what Ecocide Law does is it disrupts that pattern of harm. And it disrupts it and flips it so that instead it becomes a virtuous cycle of protection. And that's very important here. And that's why I say it's a preemptive law as well. The boardroom then has to ask the question, do we proceed with this? If so, is this going to cause serious harm? Am I going to be held to account for this in a criminal court of law? If so, I'm not going to go there. Our shareholders will find it untenable. Our investors won't finance this. And indeed that government won't even give us the permit to continue with our operations. So it operates on a number of levels, and it provides assistance for government ministers. Minister to turn around and say, I cannot provide you with a permit because that will cause harm. I can provide you with permits for something that doesn't cause harm. So it's reciprocal. It actually assists a number of different parties to operate in completely the opposite direction, and it allows the flow of innovation, of technology, of creativity in another direction to start flowing. quite literally what it does is it turns off the tap upstream where the significant harm is sourced from the decision making in the boardroom, from the decision making at the very top end of politics. So it turns that off, and it allows the flow of innovation, it allows the flow of creativity to then come through what's actively missing today.
Polly, if you were to allow yourself to vocalize the highest dream you have for this life of yours,
Yeah,
this purpose that you have, this journey that you're on,
yeah,
and you could vocalize it in a way that we can all share it with you, and we can spread it, and we can hold that dream with you,
yeah.
what would it be? How would you articulate it? Highest dream level.
One day we won't require law because our self-governance and our collective governance will be in alignment with a higher duty of care. The written law shan't be required. It will fall away. My role in this is to provide a bridge to that space. That may be generations on after I'm long gone, after we're all long gone. Ecocide Law is providing a bridge to a place where it will fall away. At the moment, the bridge has to be built. That's what we're doing with Mission Life Force, with the campaign, and with taking Ecocide Law forward. Once we're across that bridge, the bridge will just fall away because we'll all be operating from a higher place. So it's the practical steps that we put in place today that allow us to get to that stage. That's what our role is today. The chasm is so big that we can't just simply take the leap. We are building bridges to a better world. But it is that old thing of how do you change an old brush? Well, first of all, you can change the top of the brush. You put on a new brush head, and then second, you can move. You can actually change the base of it, and you've actually got a whole new brush. But then it gets to the point that you no longer even require the brush anymore to get rid of what's in the way, because actually it will be removed. We're basically putting in the practical building blocks to allow that to happen. Just as you are with TreeSisters. It will become a normative. One day these campaigns shan't be required. We'll be operating from a very different place. One day NGOs will be able to turn round and say to governments, there's an ecocide there, and the governments and the state will step in and say, absolutely, we will stop that immediately. One day it will come to the point where that doesn't even need to be said because it's just not happening anymore. But there are steps required to get to that stage. And that's it. We're at the first beginning building blocks. We're at the building blocks of creating heaven on earth. My highest dream is to be able to actually enjoy heaven on earth, whether or not it's in this lifetime or it's others that enjoy it in other lifetimes, I don't know. But my vision is not just for the next 100 years, it's the next few thousand years and onwards from there. That's where my longer eye looks to, way beyond 7 generations. What I think we can do in our lifetimes can change the trajectory for all living beings, not just human beings on this earth, forevermore. That's my highest dream.
Thank you, sweetheart. And as you're speaking, it becomes ever clearer to me how and why we should be partnering. Because I see, the trim tab on the major rudder, the smaller rudder on the big rudder that helps turn the super tanker. We're normalizing a different consciousness inside of TreeSisters. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to also be the bridge. We're trying to be that tiny little rudder on the big one that basically says the way we're behaving now is not actually what it means to be a human. It's not a human. It's not natural. It's not natural. Our natural nature is nature itself operating on behalf of itself and strengthening itself. And when we start to move into alignment with that, you simply cannot harm.
No.
You cannot harm. So yes to that future where we are the version of ourselves that we were born to be. And thank you so much for everything you're doing. We will spread this far and wide. I'm going to intend that all of our TreeSisters are also in the pot helping these small island states. And let's keep plotting. And thank you for your extraordinary courage in the face of our
Thank you.
rather interesting planetary situation.
Oh. Thank you. I feel humbled by what you're saying.
Oh,
really.
bless your heart.
Thank you.